Hello everybody, my name is Sunney Rabbit in case you couldn't tell. I'm about to review the newest Super Edition, Riverstar's Home. I've already read this book a few days ago and decided to let it marinate in my brain for a little while. This video won't be an initial thoughts video since I've already rewritten my notes into fully fleshed out thoughts. Consider this an in-depth look at the newest addition to the Warrior Cats universe. I'll be going over main plot points, story elements, and basically covering the whole book, so if you haven't read this book but wish to, try to revisit this video later. So without further ado, let's hop right into the review. As you've probably seen from the excerpt, the prologue of this book shows how Riverstar gets sent down the river to the forest territories. River Ripple renames himself to honor the river, meets some friends, gets beat up, lives as a kitty pet for a while, and returns to his spot back at the river. From here, the book retreads old ground, giving us the dawn of the clan saga from River Ripple's perspective. A lot of the internal conflict for River Ripple has to do with three things. 1. Wanting to go home to the park but it's too far. 2. Wanting a group of his own but loners typically live only for themselves. And 3. Having a dead girlfriend. Issue 1 more or less works itself out, as River Ripple accepts that he might never go home, and he makes peace with that. He waffles a bit for a while if he'll go home, but the farthest he gets is the gorge before he turns back due to an injured leg. He still wonders what became of his old friends, but he realizes they might be happy as kitty pets or maybe found a new home to live in. The second conflict is something that River Ripple strives for, but it's back and forth as some of the group members come and go. With the introduction of the mountain cats to the forest territory, some loners don't wish to be seen as a threat to Clear Sky or Grey Wings groups. I like the explanation for all the other cats leaving the group because it makes sense. These random mountain cats start crowding in, taking territory, and you're trapped in the middle. I wouldn't feel safe there either, even with a big community to care for and help. It's kind of a bummer that the mountain cats were such an imposing force that a lot of the loners stopped feeling safe there because you might give the wrong impression that you're competing with them. Later, River Ripple becomes a leader and slowly starts getting more cats to join his group for one reason or another. We get some new faces in Kitewing and her 3 kits, Knight's brother Mist, and Hollow. They've always been there this whole time apparently, but we know they were recently added to the allegiances to boost River Clan's numbers. Back on topic, the third conflict is something I'll get to talking about later in the review. Trust me, we'll get to it. Largely, I thought the first half of the book was redundant. I didn't feel like I understood River Ripple better or worse by having seen the Dawn of the Clans arc from his perspective. He was always some peaceful, weird little guy who seemed content to just go with the flow. This book gives him some more internal motivation to help Grey Wings group and start his own clan. I guess seeing River Ripple's early life was fine, it's just everything around it didn't make up for it. Going into this book, I was not familiar with the park cats as I hadn't read the bonus chapter of Thunder Rising. I enjoyed reading River Ripple mourning his old home and friends, giving him motivation for wanting a home like that on the river. He admires the way the mountain cats care for each other, but is also opposed to how they fight for territory and prey when there's plenty to go around. He learns to accept that he never will go home and makes compromises with having to fight to keep what he owns. It was a good internal struggle for River Ripple to have, I just wish it took place somewhere else in the timeline. In my opinion, this book should have started at the 9 Lives ceremony and continued on. All of the new and mostly good stuff is after this book has passed the Dawn of the Clans books. We see that River Ripple gets news of Grey Wing's death and receives his clan's name from Clear Sky and Thunder. I do wish the book would have let River Ripple mourn Grey Wing just a tad bit more, considering they were somewhat close companions. Immediately after River Clan is named, we get Riverstar's 9 Lives ceremony, so skipping all of Mothlight's vision if you're confused about the timeline. Riverstar receives his 9 lives from the mountain cats like Grey Wing, Jackdaw's Cry, Moonshadow, etc. Storm comes forward and gives him a life. She says, "With this life I give you a wise and nurturing heart, so that you may support and encourage your clan, and, one day, your kits." Later, he sees Flutter, his former almost mate, in StarClan, and she gives him a life. Once again, I will talk about that later. One thing I did catch in this book, it says that Windrunner was fatally injured. Windrunner told the other clans that she had died of her injuries and came back to life after receiving the 9 lives. That can't be true because if that happened, she would only have received 8 lives per Tigerheart's shadow. Maybe she was just lying. Some time passes, we hear that things are going well for the clans. Riverstar has a medicine cat, his deputy is Knight, and RiverClan has apprentices now. I've double checked and it seems that the apprentices just sort of popped up on their own. They are called by name both in this book and Mothlight's vision, so the creation of the role happened off screen somewhere. Same thing happened to the deputy's position. Knight is told by StarClan to be the deputy of RiverClan, though before that, even in Mothlight's vision, the role wasn't made at the time. Moving on from that, Riverstar's old friend Ark comes to the clan and there's conflict whether Riverstar can leave his clan to help his old park mates. Slash has returned. finally, and is causing trouble in the park cat's new home. Riverstar leaves, much to everyone's dismay, and they go on a Slash hunt. I'm not surprised that Slash returned in this book. It makes sense considering he left like a cheesy villain who would make the heroes rue the day or whatever. Least surprising turn of events, but it's better than just having Slash be a guy who never shows up again like Soul. Who knows, maybe Soul will show up again in Warrior Clan. We get traveling for a little while and Drizzle shows up. For a few minutes I was dreading that Riverstar would fall in love with Drizzle because of that stupid 9 Lives ceremony. Here's a quote from my notes once she showed up. Christ, don't let him and Drizzle become mates on this journey. He made a remark earlier about how he admired how she kept her name because she affirmed her own self, but God almighty, the last thing Riverstar needs is a mate. That pretty much sums up what I was feeling when Riverstar was told that he would have a mate in Kits. Anyways, Drizzle almost drowns and Riverstar loses a life. Greywing chastises him a little and Riverstar comes back. On the rest of the journey, Riverstar is out of his element. He hasn't been meditating regularly, and losing a life certainly didn't help. Being apart from the river also helped in making him lose some of his edge. He worries that Ark and Drizzle will die since they only have 1 life to lose, and that's some pretty good conflict honestly. Ark and Drizzle don't seem that concerned, and Riverstar is in the background like a doting father wanting them to not fall off stuff. It's really funny. We get some more traveling and they show up at the park. Things are bad as usual, so the group devises a plan to attack the rogues and stop Slash. They train in secret, then attack after they believe they influenced some of the cats to turn on Slash. Those cats don't actually help and Riverstar loses a 2nd life. Greywing gets snippy and says that he shouldn't be wasting lives like this and sends Riverstar back. Riverstar, with the power of God and anime on his side, scares the rogues away by freaking about that he came back from the dead. Slash, alone and terribly confused, threatens to drop an old man off a cliff. Slash falls instead and drowns in the river, and that's the last we see of him. Goodbye, Slash. You were a C-list villain from start to finish. Some time passes and Riverstar hasn't left the park yet. He enjoys not having responsibilities, and with the rain, the river is too high to travel next to. Well, some more time passes, the rain has stopped, but uh-oh! Riverstar has a new girlfriend, Finch. Finch is a nothing character, so there's nothing I can really say about her. I did have a fun little note after I figured out that she was pregnant. I was right, she was pregnant. Was this romance needed? Riverstar's the last cat I thought needed a romance arc with Kits. Prediction, there's 3 Kits. I was dead on with him having 3 Kits, by the way. Drizzle is anxious to leave, so she tries surfing down the river on a log and almost drowns. Riverstar has to choose between his pregnant wife and his clan, and the clan wins over. Finch doesn't want to leave the park, since it's all she's known. Her father and her kids from her previous litter live there, and she just can't bring herself to leave. But she does so anyway after Riverstar and Drizzle set off. Who could have seen that coming? Clear Skies is also an antagonist in the last third of this book. A tree bridge connecting Sky Clan and River Clan territories was a gift from Star Clan or something, so Clear Sky moves in to take over. Riverstar asks for help from the other leaders, and they just sort of shrug their shoulders and wait for it to work itself out. Riverstar fends off Clear Sky and the day is saved. Riverstar goes home and all is well. So with the summary out of the way, now I have a chance to speak about the stuff I did and didn't like about this book with the full context. First things first, we need to talk about the elephant in the room that I've restrained myself from talking about twice. Riverstar gets a mate and has Kits in this book. Riverstar is the last cat that I wanted to have a mate in Kits outside of maybe Tall Shadow. It was nice that not every founding leader had to have a love interest or needed to have a romance. While I guess I'm not opposed to the idea of Riverstar and Shadowstar having mates, this book in particular had to go into the trope that I absolutely hate. This entire arc's trope is basically summed up as being basically dead wife. Turtletail, Brightstream, Storm, and now Flutter were all love interests before being killed off. Then a second mate leader comes along and has Kits with the protagonists. I've already made it clear that she-cats having dead mates, then finding a new one and having kids is not portrayed on the same level as when this happens to male characters. Violet Dawn, and later Finch's, mates aren't presented in the same way as Riverstar's longing for Flutter or how Greywing misses Turtletail. The she-cat's former mates are mentioned in passing. We might get a name, never a description, and that's the end of it. It's so disappointing that Riverstar had to add on to an already large list of male characters having dead love interests, especially considering this particular arc is full of them already. It was just such an unnecessary addition to his character. Flutter only exists as a vehicle for Riverstar to be sad and longing. I can't tell you anything about her character other than the fact that she's generically beautiful and that she's dead. Another dead mate that exists for a male character so that he can be sad and eventually move on to another woman and have babies. Sometimes the lady might have a dead husband, but you'll never hear about him or see him since he's died off screen. His mate Finch is a nothing character. Largely I think she just exists to fill a quota for guys to have mates and Kits. Headstrong, confident, and a perfect wife for Riverstar. There's a push and pull that she might not come with him or might not want to stay, but she later just accepts that Riverstar is who she wants to be with. It just seems like it was made for drama. She just sort of comes around on her own time. I think it would have been more interesting for her to stay at the park or actually leave RiverClan, but it just sort of works itself out by the power of love. I think I didn't like her largely because she fits into she-cats have mates and kits and that's all they really care about mold. I just wish she had more agency in some way that wasn't being tied with Riverstar. She leaves her family, home, and previous litter to be with him. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me, and I think it's because Riverstar gets to have his cake and eat it too. He gets to visit his friends, go home, and have a mate and kits. While not abandoning his clan, he definitely stays too long for personal reasons, leading to consequences with clan politics. Some of his cats leave after being threatened by an aggressive Sky Clan, and some cats are angry, but there's nothing that he personally had to give up. Finch just decides to uproot her whole life for a mate, and that makes me a little upset that Riverstar got away with being stubborn about his responsibilities with no real give and take. I think having a male leader having to struggle with deciding between kits and clan would have been a welcome change, but he didn't have to. Finch decided for him and he got to have both. That's hopefully the last I'll have to say about this specific trope, and I really hope it dies sometime soon. As it stands, it looks like Palebird is the only she-cat to have a mate who dies and goes on to have a second mate and new leader, and it be presented in the story similarly to when it happens to a male character. This trope is done to death at this point, and it largely falls on the females in the relationships to be the one to die, so their male counterparts can get some character development. Moving on to something more positive, I like the introduction of warriors into the clans. The individual dens being made and seeing the apprentices get their first ceremonies was neat. I still haven't found where apprentices were officially made or where the naming system got its introduction. That's probably the last bit of clan history we need outside of where the legends of Leopard Clan, Tiger Clan, and Lion Clan came from, but that's not very important. It was cool seeing how clan lifestyle evolved slowly, and I'm astonished at just how much RiverClan has to give to the clans in terms of culture. The very end of the book had conflict between Sky Clan and RiverClan. The other leaders not backing up Riverstar seemed a bit contrived. The other leaders know of the Blazing Star request, so it seems dumb that they need RiverClan to defend themselves before having a say in this mess. They know Sky Clan is aggressively attacking others for territory, and they know who Clear Sky is as a person. On a surface level, I get the sentiment, but there's a real danger in letting Clear Sky attack RiverClan for territory. I suppose had things gone south, they would have aided RiverClan, but if I was a leader, I think I want to put Sky Clan back in check. I still don't understand what's going on with this character arc with Clear Sky. I hope I didn't misunderstand the Dawn of the Clans arc, but it seems like he was sort of on an upwards trajectory with it sort of plateauing. By the end, he's not that bad. Well, I wouldn't say he's improved. By the end, he's at least sort of helpful with Greywing's kits when they were stolen. Like, Clear Sky stopped sucking so bad, but he never did anything to redeem himself to anyone else other than his direct family members. Maybe he took Quiet Rain's words that the battle was destined to happen as an okay to be a jerk. That'd be very in character for him to twist someone's words to benefit him. It just seems weird that Dawn of the Clans needed him to forgive himself before taking any action on his part to be better, but he never really goes on to change. He's still being a complete ass in the novellas and super editions, and here he has completely lost his marbles. I might be thinking about it wrong and interpreting what happened as a redemption arc when it really wasn't. He personally apologized to his kin, but never really said he'd stop being aggressive or antagonizing anyone else. Making amends with his family and being a better father is probably as far as he can get, and that's the end of his arc. No straight-up villain from the series will make me froth at the mouth like Clear Sky can. Everyone just gets really weird around him, weirdly tiptoeing around his aggression when in any main series arc he would have been driven out or killed. I'm sure that after the RiverClan battle was finished and the tree bridge was swept away, he felt guilty about impeding on another clan's territory while he strikes the clanmate in the face for looking at him funny. His guilt at starting the great battle is meaningless when this is where he's at years later. There's nothing wrong with a cat not magically becoming good, but he's had too many chances and the characters keep coddling him too much. Another good thing I liked was the relationship between Knight and Riverstar and how it evolved over time. Knight is the first RiverClan deputy and Riverstar's best friend. She found him by the river and taught him how to fish and swim once he decided to live there. Knight used to be a loner who would live with her brother, and the two would never really stay in one place. At times they would leave their nest at the river for half a month or longer. When Riverstar leaves the clan to go help the park cats, he gives himself a timeline of 2 moons before he has to return home. He instructs Knight that if he doesn't return in that time frame, that she is to be the new leader of RiverClan. Well, he gets very, very close to that deadline before he returns. That day, Knight would have gone to the Moonstone to receive her 9 lives. It really astonishes me that she was ready to do that. A former loner who came and went as she pleased, who really didn't like living with others, was ready to lead an entire clan because her best friend told her to. Night could have just dissolved River Clan, especially since Sky Clan was trying to take their territory, but she didn't. She was fully committed to being a leader and deputy. The clan's worst still new at the time. They didn't have to continue on if they didn't want to. Night is a real girl boss is what I'm saying. Seeing River Clan grow because River Ripple was a nice person was cool to see. Cats were free to come and stay for however long they wanted and not feel pressured into staying forever. We see him pretty much accept everyone except for One Eye, and One Eye was obviously a crazy murderer. What was Clear Sky thinking? River Ripple even accepts a kitty pet and her 2 kits, which is funny because at the time Early Wind Clan had kicked out Bumble for being a kitty pet. His lifestyle was a big contrast to how the other clans were being run at the time. Also, how far out in the timeline does the second half of this book take place? Shadowstar is still there, so before Shadowstar's life. I didn't hear any mention of allies being deputies, so presumably before Thunderstar's Echo. They retconned in new cats since River Clan's numbers were low. Look at the allegiances of the novellas and you won't see a Kite Wing or her kits, and you won't see Finch either. Riverstar's home doesn't really glean any new information from his perspective. He's a rather straightforward character. I guess it's more backstory for him. He got to be a kitty pet once, but we already knew he was opposed to fighting in the borders from Dawn of the Clans. If you read the bonus chapter, you already knew he was a part cat, but now they gave him a mate and changed a bit of the story. I guess I just didn't come out of this feeling like I learned more about River Ripple. I've got to make a personal tier list of super editions at this point. While I don't think this one is as low as something like Mothflight's Vision, it wasn't great for me personally. When we do have super editions where it's the events of things that we see from another cat's perspective, like One Star's Confession or Leopard Star's Honor, it's to give us new information about a character. Why did they do this? Why did they think this? With Leopard Star's Honor, as much as I disliked the book for forcing a love interest, I came out of it understanding her better as a leader and the choices that she made. Her siding with Tiger Star had a lot more context with her being a rather ambitious cat. I largely didn't feel like that's what happened with the first part of this book. The second half is much better, and excluding the love interest, is a pretty solid story about Riverstar. If the book had started at the 9 Lives ceremony and continued from there, I think Riverstar would have had a much more interesting story to tell. I'm just disappointed in this super edition in particular. Riverstar was one of my favorites in Dawn of the Clans, and he just sort of fell flat here. If I had to give this book a number rating, I guess a 5 out of 10, leaning more towards a 4 than a 6. It had some good stuff, it had some bad stuff, but it largely didn't exceed my expectations, which were admittedly pretty low once I saw the early excerpts. The added romance drama is tired, and it should have been replaced with something else entirely. I think that this book was too safe for a super edition, and I don't mean that nobody died. It's that the story and drama were to be expected. Dawn of the Clans, from Riverstar's perspective, took up so much of the book's time that it didn't give the story anything interesting to do after that. We get some traveling, he fights Baby Darktail, he gets a wife and goes home. Slash coming back was to be expected at some point, so I'm not surprised that he found a new group of cats to terrorize. The Clear Sky conflict was new, but it was at the very end of this book, and River Clan is here today, so we already know how that fight went before it even happened. This era should be new territory for Warriors, so I'm just a little surprised that this is what the authors went with. That's all I have to say about this book in particular. I'll be reviewing Thunderstar's Echo and revisiting Shadowstar's Life to close off the Dawn of the Clans arc reviewing. When November rolls around, I'll be doing an initial thoughts video on the newest book, Thunder, once it's out. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.